Books don't mix with water. A Percabeth alternate universe fanfiction. Part 14. Annabeth sighed and closed her book. Her room was quiet, as always, but the thoughts in her mind were as loud as ever. The book was, quite honestly, giving her a headache, as it always did when she was straining the limits of her mind. Dyslexia and being a bookworm was a very odd combination after all. Her eyes flickered to her phone. She reached for it and found that it was way too far away, groaned about how it was too far away, and then finally got up to grab it. Clicking it open, Annabeth smiled fondly at the absolutely horrid picture of Percy that was her home screen. For the record, he had stolen her phone one day and taken about 1,000 selfies on it. So she had taken the liberty, after finding the worst one that she could, and making it her home screen for all the world to see. The first time the black-haired boy saw it, he dramatically panicked. "How dare you!" he had shouted, and Annabeth literally died laughing. "Your fault for taking them," she had replied. He was left sputtering in the hall. It was very funny, albeit confusing for the students who had seen the aftermath of the situation. Why ever was the king served for Percy red-faced and shrieking in the halls? May the world never know. Sighing, Annabeth looked fondly at the terrible home screen. She hadn't known Percy for long, but, for say only 3 months, but he had somehow made his way into her life. So much so, he couldn't even be removed. Not that she wanted him out, though. No, he was such a lovely addition. As a person with her past baggage, Annabeth was never one standing with open arms. Yet in less time than anyone else, Percy had pried the ice off of her heart. Now it was normal for her to find him in the halls and reach up and smack his head as a greeting. It was normal for him to drag her out to sit with his friends at lunch during one of the few lunch switches. They often walked home together, or at least when they did, it was really nice. It wasn't so much as a shock for people to see the local celebrity Percy Jackson out and about with Annabeth Chase. Apparently, the little Percy Jackson fan club thing had reported her as a known associate, as if Percy was some international superstar. He acted like everyone he talked to was just as important and high and mighty. Okay, well, admittedly, he had the charisma to be a real star, but he was modest and young, so not quite yet was he one. Despite that, it was strange to know that she was associated with Percy Jackson, though they were just close friends. I'm excited. Okay, so why am I not surprised? Annabeth rolled her eyes as she could practically hear Percy pouting from the other line. "You're excited to see me too, right?" Percy said. Annabeth made a huge show of drawing out. Okay, don't be like that, Percy said. Percy cried as Annabeth laughed at him. "So, the bookstore again?" he asked for confirmation. Annabeth took in a sharp breath. She had planned to tell him that, hey, she lived in that place for real. He had joked about how it was like she basically lived there, and of course Annabeth's pride had taken a blow, like it did every time she had to tell someone that she lived in a freaking bookstore. "Yup," she said, slightly strained. "See you in 10 minutes. Bye." Hanging up quickly, Annabeth sighed and stared down at her phone. It wouldn't be a mistake to tell him. Percy was nice and understanding and, never the type to judge. She wouldn't mind. Hopefully. Standing up and grabbing the book that she had tried to read but just really couldn't. It was so boring. Annabeth went down to the bookstore to place it back on the shelf. "So the boy is coming," Chiron said behind her and with a definite smirk. Annabeth rolled her eyes. "Okay, yeah, but don't make it sound like that." she said, with quite a bit of teenage angst. Chiron mocked innocence. Whatever do you mean? I'm just saying your male friend, who you have been hanging out a lot with lately, is coming to pick you up and will learn about the place in which you resided, Chiron said. Annabeth gave a sharp laughter. We're not dating, she said, firmly. Chiron raised a brow at that sentence. Of course not. His face had a knowing and kind smile on it. Annabeth snorted again and made her way outside. I swear you're tied to this place, Percy commented when Annabeth went over to the car window. I mean, like, we're always at my house, but I don't even know where you live. Annabeth bit her tongue. Of course this topic was brought up. Surprisingly, it actually made it easier to tell him, since it was less awkward than saying, oh, by the way, I live here, since you didn't ask. Now you know. Okay. Actually, you do know, Annabeth admitted. Her face was going red. No matter how many times she had to say and admit it, which was, 4 times, her pride could barely stand it. Who wanted to say and admit that they lived in a bookstore? Percy looked at her in utter confusion. What? Annabeth took a deep breath. That's really not an exaggeration. She pointed to the bookstore and swallowed. That's my home, she said. Percy blinked at her. Okay. Ice cream? Percy said, waving his arm frantically to the passenger side seat. Annabeth smiled at him. He and Piper apparently had the same reaction to most things. As always, she said with a smile. They're headed to Target to pick up some stuff for a Sunday night on a Saturday night. If you have questions, you can ask it. I'm fine, Annabeth said when she started noticing Percy occasionally opening his mouth and then closing it. What are you comfortable sharing? He asked, surprising her. Most people just launched into questions because, she'd admit, it was really freaking weird to live in a bookstore when you were 17. I'm emancipated. I've been for years, she started. Percy flickered his eyes to her and then back on the road to show he was listening. Biological family? He asked. A few blocks away. I left home at an early age. This was close by. Chiron knew my mother, she explained. Percy nodded, almost solemnly. Family things. I get it, he said, gripping the steering wheel infinitesimally more. Annabeth gave him a small smile. Percy shrugged and looked at her. My dad bounced as soon as my mom was pregnant with me, and let me tell you, that evil step-parent thing is very much true. Or at least it was for me, Percy said. His expression was clouded over. There was clearly a story there, but Annabeth didn't push it. I feel you. Same with step-siblings. Or half-siblings. Whatever, at least kinda. She leaned back. I should probably count myself lucky that never happened. He literally shuddered. Annabeth gave him a wary smile. On the occasion, she'd see her family out on a perfect family walk, looking adorable. It was tense between her and her father. He looked like he regretted letting her go. But she was glad it had happened and did not intend to come back to the family. Her brothers, they were mostly a nightmare. They'd kick and scream, and Annabeth thanked the gods for sparing her hearing. However, and unlike their parents, the twins adored her. Perhaps it had something to do with the fact that they never saw her, or maybe it was because she was 17 and big teenagers were cool. Whatever the reason, they clamored over her, which was both annoying and endearing for her, for Annabeth, for once feeling the love of a family member. It was very weird. Thanks for understanding, Annabeth said with a smile. Percy looked at her with a comforting look, not one of pity for once. Yeah, no one has a perfect life. It's all cool. I mean, you're still amazing despite your past, Percy said so nonchalantly, Annabeth doubted he even understood the intensity in which his words struck her. With a small thanks, Annabeth turned away from him and looked out the window. Her face was pink with the blush, and it was really hard to curb the smile. She thought back to what Chiron said. She and Percy were not dating. And as Chiron said, he knew that. But the silent yet still stayed stuck in her mind.